Funds, I don't think, are the bigger constraint today. I think it is mostly the vision and the management, which is a key constraint. There are very many development objectives which can only be met if the private sector in India, and particularly if you have younger people who, who find value in it.
To this episode of Sustainability Karma. I'm your host Naina Gautam, and today we have with us a very special guest, Dr. Shamika Ravi. She is the member of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister. Welcome, Dr. Shamika Ravi. So how can India balance its economic development with sustainable development goals?
I think we are already doing it, being one of the poorest countries to attempt an audacious green transition for a country which is, let's say, 20 years behind China in terms of GDP per capita numbers, but in terms of the HDI, we are barely 6 to 8 years behind. It just goes on to show that our growth in many ways continues to also achieve a lot of the sustainable development targets. But I think more importantly, what's very crucial for people to appreciate is that, there are very few SDGs which are all India SDGs which remain. India has already attained SDGs as far as maternal mortality rate, infant mortality rate, etc. are concerned across 7 to 8 states. So our problems in terms of development are highly localized now, which means we need to have localized solutions.
So what are the key challenges in implementing policies related to sustainable development, and how can they be addressed?
Development management is a very critical constraint right now. Because while we do have the resources for a fast-growing major economy, and you are seeing the kind of revenue that is getting generated, not just within the government, but if you just look at CSR spending, funds, I don't think, are the bigger constraint today. I think it is mostly the vision and the management, which is a key constraint.
So India has made progress in renewables in many states.
Right.
So how can that be scaled to other states?
I think our transformation in terms of green energy is still limited to 6 or 7 states of the country, largely on account of the fact that these are states that have enacted policies, that have also set finances, and so they have the means and the technology to do it. But there are many other states which also, they do have the wherewithal. Meaning, if you look at poorer states like Madhya Pradesh, if you look at northeastern states like Meghalaya, these are states that do have plans. They do have innovative work that is happening on the ground, except it is not well known. Because these are states which are green, and they're looking at models of growth and development which go beyond GDP numbers. So they are really looking at ways of preserving the green cover or the biodiversity. So I think newer financial instruments indexed will emerge. Right now they don't exist, but I'm guessing, given that states like these are doing the groundwork of mapping these across their districts, it's a matter of time that the markets will respond to this kind of an exercise at local state levels.
So how can the private sector play a role in accelerating sustainable development?
Oh, the private sector is a very important ally because by no means is development limited to only the state. Its role is in facilitating and driving many of these changes, but there are very many development objectives which can only be met if the private sector in India, and particularly if you have younger people who find value in it and who dedicate themselves. And I think that is why development management becomes, it's a new area, it's a niche area, but it's a very critical area for taking the country forward in a more inclusive and developed way.
So you mentioned about young people. So how can India harness its demographic dividend to drive innovation and entrepreneurship and sustainable development?
So we are a young country, but we are also, we have 120 million people above the age of 60. And that is, I think, the uniqueness of India, that what on an average might be true, which is that our median age is still 28, so we are a young country. But we also have an old population which is sizable. But because we are young, there is an entire opportunity of long-term rise in labor productivity, long-term growth largely sustained by its young population. Because sometimes we forget that people grow nations, right? People are the ones who are going to find development solutions and eventually get impacted. So I think a young population is a huge asset, particularly if you consider that the world is aging. So India's young population is a very important strategic resource for the country.
Thank you, Dr. Shamika Ravi, for such an insightful conversation. This is Naina Gautam signing off for Sustainability Karma.
We hope you like this program. This program is also live streamed on All India Radio and aired on community radio stations. We look forward to your feedback on our WhatsApp number 9818120554. For participation in this program, write to us at sustainability.karma@gmail.com. You may also connect with us on social media. This podcast is also available on podcast hosting sites. Looking forward to meet you again at the same time next week with a new episode and a new guest. Till then, goodbye from all of us. Sustainability Karma, a podcast series on sustainable development, sustainability and ESG.